Okay.
This Danish ship was...
Well, I'm going to do an introduction first.
Oh, yes, sure, I'm sorry.
This is a home interview, Calverton, New York. It is the 17th of March, 2005, approximately 10:30 a.m. Interviewers are Wayne Clark and Mike Russert. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Frank Lindstrom, date of birth, Brooklyn, New York, Kings County Hospital, and my birthday is tomorrow, March 18th,
What year were you born?
1921.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering the Merchant Marine Service?
1 year of high school, and I walked out of the junior high school that I was in, and they kept bothering my father, and finally told him, well, he went to Europe to learn a trade. So they accepted that, they never bothered him anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you joined in the Merchant Marine Service in the Danish Merchant Marine Service in 1936.
Yes.
Why did you...
I was too young to go to sea.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even 15 yet. And I turned 15 2 weeks after I got on that ship. I got on like the 4th of March.
Now, how did you did this? Did you join this ship in New York Harbor, or did you go to Europe, or
I joined in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn?
During my school career or life up until this point, whenever we wanted to play hooky, put it right out, we went down the docks and looked at the ships, and boy, if I was on that ship, you know, kids dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
So my father was a taxi cab driver at the time. He was a former merchant seaman. But when in his taxi business, downtown Manhattan, he must have met somebody. So one day he put it to me, he said, you know, I'm sick and tired of you. And it's bad enough you don't behave, you don't have to be dumb besides. Why don't you think about it? Go to work or go to school? I'll give you a choice. I said, well, I'd rather go to work. So he got me a job on a ship, on a Danish ship, right from his taxi cab.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, well, a year and a half later, I was still only 16 and a half. And I tried to go to American Merchant Marine, but I was too young, I had to be 17.
Well, what did you do on the Danish ship? What kind of work?
Deck boy and mess boy.
Okay.
And the most interesting part of that ship was the first trip. We loaded up in Brooklyn, partially, and then we went to Boston, Philadelphia, and Baltimore, and then back to Brooklyn to finish loading a load of grain. Mm-hmm. And they load that loosely. They just pour it into the ship. And after we were finished, the ship, we were supposed to sail. And here it is, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and with no sign of sailing. We were all ready to leave the dock. And suddenly, they always talk about a big black car like it was a Cadillac. Pulls down the dock, and a man and a woman get out, and a little girl. The stevedores handled his luggage and brought it on the ship. And as soon as they were aboard, then we took off. Now this was very mysterious and something different. And we all wondered who these people were. We found out the next day, in Spain they were having the Spanish Revolution. Mm-hmm. And this man and his wife were hiding here and going back to Spain. The man was General Franco's brother.
Oh.
So that made a big secret because they were afraid of getting waylaid someplace, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So we were at sea about 2 days, and we got a message from our home office to change our course and go south to a latitude, longitude, which I didn't know, of course. And we had to pick up another ship in our company. She broke down, and the captain told the men that what we were going to do. Don't forget, when we start handling lines, I want every man on the ship to start handling those lines. Even if you only get your hands, the cooks, the stewards, the engine room, everybody's got to handle these lines. Mm-hmm. We didn't know why, but this had something to do with salvage rights. Every man on the ship was helping to tie that ship up. So, as it proved out, the captain knew more about this than we did. A year and a half later, we got a settlement from Lloyd's of London. And like come to about a month and a half's pay. For me.
Now, did you have any trouble with language on the ship?
No, no, because my mother was Danish. I knew a lot of Danish, and they spoke a lot of English.
Oh, okay.
So I said, a year later, we had 3.5 months' pay, and mine comes to $50.88 Danish money.
Uh-huh.
But I stayed on that year and a half, and I learned a lot. You don't just go on there to be a mess boy. They want you to be something better. So on Saturdays and Sundays, they have you up on the wheel, steering at night, look out. And when you were a Danish or a foreign seaman, they really get trained on the job.
Now, did you find that they treated you better than the Americans, or?
No. How do you mean the Americans?
Well, I mean when you got a job in the American Merchant Marine. I mean,
no.
was it any different?
No, not at all. They gave me a lot of credit, a lot of them.
Uh-huh.
You know. But by that time, I was already lying a year to get on the American ship. Forged my birth certificate.
So well, you transferred over then to the American Merchant Marines in 1937.
That's right.
Where was that, in New York
In New
again,
York,
when you came
yes.
back to New York?
I had trouble with it because I was too young.
Mm-hmm.
So my father took me up to the Union Hall. I met Joe Curran. I don't know if you ever heard of Joe Curran, the president of that union for 40 years. When he retired, the union gave him $1 million cash.
Wow.
Because he was such a good president. Anyway, I met him, and my father told me what we were doing. He said, "Oh, no, go up and see so-and-so, the lawyer." So he took my birth certificate, and when he tore it up, he said, "Go down and apply for a new birth certificate. And they tell him, you're 18, you tell him you're 17, not 16. So it was my birth certificate that we forged, that's what it was. And then we come back to the Union Hall, and I shipped down on a Union ship. I was the kid on the ship, that's for sure.
Now, what kind of duties did you do on the American ship? Basically the same?
Basically, it's the same. I started off as a mess boy, messman, and looking for an opening on the ship as an ordinary seaman. So I made a couple of trips as mess boy, and then after that was ordinary seaman. And when I got enough time, and I went for a able-bodied seaman. I could never go any higher because of my eyes. It was always been a handicap.
Could you explain the difference between a seaman and an able-bodied seaman?
An ordinary seaman is the entry rating,
Mm-hmm.
and he could be told to do just about anything on deck. In the steward's department, a messman is the entry rating,
Mm-hmm.
and the engine room wiper is the entry rating, and he does anything in the engine room wiper, just what it says. But as far as me, I had to learn how to make beds. I was officer's messman. I made bunks, made coffee, served the meals to these officers, and they really catered to the officers.
Mm-hmm.
The crew, they served themselves and made their own bunks. But the officers, they were well taken care of, and the ship was immaculate.
Mm-hmm. Was it run like the military?
No.
Pretty strict?
It was strict with the respect,
Uh-huh.
and the respect was earned. And I don't remember talking back once, but I didn't like what was said, and I got a backhand. They didn't like my response. But I'll never forget that, and I respected that man. He did it right out in the open. He was the second mate on the ship. But they lived with that kind of routine, respect each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
What kind of cargoes did you usually carry on these ships?
Everything. I have an album there I can show you. An airplane on deck, 2-engine plane like a small bomber would be, and that was going to Germany via Italy. Does that make sense? They say the war wasn't on, the war was on already.
But this was before we got involved in it.
Right. Before we got involved, we lost a lot of ships anyway. They sank American ships.
Were you ever on a ship that was under attack by submarines?
Yes.
Could you talk about that?
Well, usually when we're in convoy,
Mm-hmm.
submarine come and they break up the convoy. Everybody scattered. The destroyers went in where the submarines were seen last. And once in a while we counterattacked and then dropped death charges. And it got to the point where it almost sounded like a drum, you know, boom, 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 boom. There's so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
I was on one ship called the Betty Zane. It was a Liberty ship. And we were in convoy going to North Africa. We were going to be in the North Africa invasion. And I was on a 12 to 4 watch. And about 1:30 in the morning, the old man was up. Oh, I say now. We were in convoy, and we broke down. The destroyer comes over to find out what was wrong with us, because the convoy just keeps going, and you're sitting there like a sitting duck. So via signal lights, we told them what happened. We broke down. Well, how long will it take you to go? 6 to 8 hours. So the destroyer said back that, well, I can stand by you till 6:45, and then I must leave. 6:45 in the morning, that guy come over, blinked with no radio, blinked goodbye and good luck. So now we're alone, and we're going to travel now full speed, whereas the convoys travel like about 10 knots. So we're going to travel about maybe 12 or 13. They were hoping possibly, with the time that the convoy loses zigzag, and we're not zigzagging, that we might catch up to them the next day. But that didn't happen. So that night, I'm at the wheel. It's about 1:45. I'm waiting for relief. 2 o'clock. When all of a sudden there was a flare fire from way off on our the starboard side, and a flare of that type you'd love to have them at 4th of July, because it sparkles all the way up. And when it gets up right above where they wanted it, then it breaks, and the daylight just drops down on you. That sub could read a book from if we were holding it. Well, anyway, the old man's on a bridge. He sees us coming up before it even broke. God damn it, it's another sub. Hard left, hard left. Now that the wind, we get the hard left to get away from him. So as it was, we did get away. And we just kept going with the secret orders that we had, that we opened every day. I say we, not me. I was just an able-bodied seaman on the ship. But then we headed for Casablanca. The invasion had already started. So we pulled into Casablanca. And just on the way in, destroyers come out, the planes come out to check us. They knew we were there. Checked us on the way back to Casablanca.
Now, did your plane carry any sort of armament, or your ship carry any sort of armament?
I think we had 6 or 8 20 millimeter machine guns, and a 3-inch on the bow and a 5-inch on the stern. And then those are guns that we practice on. We originally, in the beginning of the war, when they were short of men, we asked the government, the union, the officials, said just put some few trained men on, and they'll train our men. And then, well, it'll take time to either full crew, but meanwhile we'll have some of our crew that are trained on the guns. So a lot of us were on guns at different times.
Now, did you have any uniformed, like armed guard?
No. Oh yes, we did have armed guard. But at first when they were putting them on, they could only spare 6, 8. And then they got to the point where we had about 30 of them. Then they were called out a full crew.
How did you guys get along?
But oh God, perfect. But the only thing we felt sorry for was that they were getting like not even half pay what we got. But of course the benefits they got made up the difference.
Sure.
We lost an estimated $80,000 in benefits after the war. We were only recognized in '88. And even that recognition was limited. I just got a letter from Florida yesterday. This woman clipped it out of paper. Somebody wrote in and criticized the Merchant Marine now fighting for benefits. And this guy made such a big deal out of it that we didn't deserve anything. They didn't know, or he didn't know. He wouldn't have been so nasty. Our pay stopped when that ship sank. A lot of people didn't know that. We didn't get any free clothes, free medical, a lot of things. When you add them up, we were way underpaid.
Now you said you were at Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, not when it happened. I quit my ship in October, number 41. Me and this other guy, we're young kids, remember, 20 years old, we're looking for fun, looking for adventure. How about staying this whole life for a couple of days, a couple of weeks? Yeah, sure, we could have quit. Now that's an American port. The captain can't refuse me quitting. And there was a union hall there, and all you had to do was call up and get a couple more men. So he and this buddy of mine, we quit. Went right up to the Seaman's house. It was right on the Waikiki Beach. Not the beach proper, but along that stretch. And there's a Seaman's house. And for $15 we got a room for 2 with breakfast included for a week.
Wow.
How could you beat that? So we stayed there, and this guy, he was an ex-Navy man. And we'd be walking around and whatnot, and he'd see a couple of sailors, and he'd recognize their emblem. Hey, bosun, hey, mayor, whatever. Okay, how about paying a couple of bucks for a couple of ex-seamen, for a couple of seamen? Always had some kind of a story. And we bummed them around for a couple of weeks. But then I was getting tiresome, so I figured, well, we might as well look for a job. And they were hiring men like crazy. Wake Island, Johnson, Midway, all those islands, they were hiring to help through Honolulu. And I ordered a cop. Now, I wasn't an electrician either, but any time you went to one of these agencies, You know, they said, oh, we need carpenters. I'm not a carpenter. Can you buy a hammer and a saw? Yeah, well, that makes you a carpenter. And that's true. That's how bad they were, short of men. So finally I got wind of the USED, United States Engineering Dredge. He was looking for replacement help, and it's on an island. So I got down to investigate it. Yes, they're looking for deckhands. And well, there was 23 of us all told, different ratings that they needed. So we signed on, and we were leaving Wednesday as deck passengers, and the deck passengers sleep right on the deck. we went in the galley for lunch and meals after the Navy guys ate. They treat us like cattle. Not bad, but they weren't that polite. So we got to the island, and the pay was good. It was like 183 a month, less room and board. They charged for the room and board. So we got 143 a month, which was pretty good for those days. And you signed a 6-month contract. So we left Pearl Harbor the 5th of November. I'm going back 60 years ago. I remember this stuff.
Yeah.
We left Pearl Harbor on a Wednesday, and that was the 5th of November. And we got to the island the 8th of November. Now we're at peace, but that destroyer traveled with guns manned every day, and the ship was blacked out. So there's no war on. What are we doing that for? They had an idea the Jap fleet was at sea someplace, and they didn't know where, so they were just being careful. So we got to the island, 8th of November, went to the dredge, and the dredge it was a civil service job. And the captain, his name was Thatcher. So I suppose they sent me some merchant seamen. I wanted some civil service workers. He was looking to get anybody out. So just settled down into a routine. We had 3 shifts, 3 8-hour shifts. And then Sunday was our maintenance day. We didn't do any production. We were building 2 landing fields. One bomber run and another over here was a fighter run. So Sunday, we didn't do any production, we did repair work. And we had a pump that was like 15 feet high. You know the old washing machine pumps with an impeller inside? Well, this was 15 feet high, the same thing. So the big job was on Sunday was to take the side plate off, we have chain falls, take the side plate off and inspect this impeller in this thing for cracks, for breaks. And whatever repairs it need we do and put the plate back. Well, we're just about swinging this plate out, and the chief engineer comes in. Hey, fellas, knock off. Pearl Harbor's being attacked. Yeah, you're drinking too much of that stuff we're making, you know. So he went up and got the captain. The captain told us, knock off, man. Come up and listen. The dredge had 2 decks, the main deck and then the quarters. So we went there, and sure enough, the chief got it on the radio. Pearl Harbor, the guys that just driving, they're almost crying when they're talking about the damage that was being done. So from there, we walked up to the Navy barracks, and there was 20 or 43 of us all told, between the crew. Now I don't think the captain went up, and we wanted to volunteer. Hey, you're not going to stay here and watch if the island got attacked. So this Navy commander, and I'm surprised to this day yet, he was so young and he was so smart, so capable. So he gave us a big long spiel from a paper. Legally he couldn't use this, he couldn't put any uniforms on us because they didn't have them. He said, the only thing I have is 40 extra rifles, and they're in a locker in the mess hall. The only trouble is, whenever we got an alert, most of the time it was a whale. When whales come too close, our radar, which was old, would go off. So that's the most alerts we had from the whales. But the 40 extra rifles he had, well, when anything happens, anything went off, we used to run for that mess hall. And the first guy in that locker, he couldn't get out. Just stay in and hand rifles out and save one for yourself. So that went on, well, I guess, till the time I left, we did that. We volunteered some of us in the afternoon, daylight, we get on relieve a couple of Marines. They had 4 Marines on the machine gun, and 2 we let them go down the mess hall and you get a soda or whatever. R&R, that's the only R&R there was. The 23rd of December, just before Christmas, they get an alert, and it was a Jap sub. So he fired 2 shells, and one went over the island, and one landed on the dredge. So he could have hit so much other stuff, but he had to hit the dredge. And they hit the lifeboat, David, and shattered the lifeboat, and shattered our galley. So of course, we were civilians, we had better food from our private supply, but it turned out we had to eat with the Navy for Christmas until we repaired the galley. So the routine got after we blacked out the dredge. As soon as Pearl Harbor happened, we couldn't work at night because there was so much light. So then, meanwhile, Pearl Harbor was sending us plywood. We had PBYs coming back and forth. It was 900 miles. And they brought material that we needed right away. With the plywood, we blacked the dredge out, all the windows and everything, so that we could work at night. And
Now, did you camouflage it at all?
no, it just couldn't.
Yeah.
It looked like a barge on top of a barge, and then it had big walking legs. I don't know if you've ever seen a dredge, a suction dredge.
Yes. Yep.
And it's got 2 legs that it walks on, you know. So it would be very hard to camouflage that. So only once did they attack us, because actually they were wasting time. There was nothing there military-wise. But then if we got the fields like so wide, then planes could land up. Now we had to concentrate on making it wider. We had the length, but now we're making the width. And it was day and night taking that coral right out. The island was shaped like a horseshoe, and it was 7.5 miles around from tip to tip, and 2.5 miles across here. And we dug all this stuff out of the lagoon, pumped to the shore. And the pilots, when they landed, they were amazed that it was so smooth, and it looked like concrete. But it wasn't. It was just this coral crushed and rolled. And then periodically we had to oil it because it got dry, and the wind would blow the sand around. And there was a lot of these guys, they praised it, you know. You guys did a nice job here. I stayed there the full 7 months. I stayed 6 and then a month overtime because they didn't have any transportation. So we were finished with the job, so that last month we worked on the dredge, camouflaging it, you know, the clothes, making it ready for sea. They had a false bow that you put on the bow and a false stern, so any waves hit it wouldn't go into it. So we had about 4 feet in freeboard, and you can't take much rain, or rainy weather or rough weather or something like that.
Where did you go from there?
From there I went back to Pearl Harbor, and now the past March I turned 20, or 21 it was at that time. So I got to get to a draft board and register before I get arrested. So I went to the draft board in Honolulu, told them who I was and what I did, and I want to register, but I'd rather register in New York, because when I leave here I'm going right home. The thing is, when you get discharged, they'll discharge you where you embarked. So I don't want to be brought out to Hawaii again for discharge. They changed that later. So they said, okay, in Pearl Harbor, we'll give you 30 days to get back to New York. So I went down to Union Hall with all the money I had. I shipped on the ship. I got paid for going back to Frisco.
Can I ask you a question? Were you able to look at the naval facilities in the harbor?
In Pearl Harbor?
Yes,
No.
when you went back.
When we come back, we docked right in town.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering if you saw the
No.
damage or...
No, we didn't. And I shipped out about the next day
Okay.
because I wanted to get back to New York.
Okay.
And the guys were kidding me. All the money you made, now you're getting paid to go home.
So you went back to the Pacific coast, and then how'd you get
I went
across?
to Frisco, and then I took a train from Frisco to New York. Met a couple of guys. We were playing cards with versus heats of 2 and 2 together. And this one kid next to me, he went to the toilet and come back. Then I went and sat down, and right on the windowsill was a big white envelope. So I opened it up, it was full of $10 bills. I got so excited, I got constipated. So I quick got my clothes ready. I went back to my seat. Look, fellas, look, I couldn't talk. I was stuttering. And this kid sitting next to me, he half got up and he, that's mine. And there was his return trip ticket in the envelope and his name and all, so it had to be his, you know.
Yeah.
And if somebody got that and grabbed it and then found out it belonged to a kid like that, you'd have to be awful mean to keep it, you know.
Yeah.
You saved a couple of years, a year and a half, to go home on leave. So we continued playing. In New York, I was newly married. My wife met me at Penn Station, and we were walking up the ramp with this guy. I introduced him. And I said, you know, I found there's a lot of money on the train. My wife says, yeah, did you get a reward? I said, no, we're going to eat it. He's taking that up to lunch. So I never heard from him. Get a Christmas card, never heard from him after that. So one of those things, some guys make it and some don't, you know. So then when I come back from there, I go back to there, I went to school, maritime school. And they kept flunking me out my eyes. I didn't belong there to begin with. I squeezed in. So I finally, before they flunk me out, I'm going to quit. And then if I go back later, well, we'll worry about later. Besides, I was newly married. Who the heck could concentrate on math and navigation? All this, I got a wife waiting for me. So I come home again, and I shipped out on the Keystone, and I sailed on the Keystone for 2 trips to England and Scotland. And before that, though, I was on the Exeter. I got a picture of the one that with the plane on it, but that was in between. That was in 1939.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, in 1939, I was on the Uruguay. More McCormick cruise ship, and I made 2 trips, and I was on the 3rd trip when we were approaching Montevideo. Then we get orders not to go into Montevideo, stay at sea. The English Navy got 3 destroyers chasing this heavy cruiser, and the cruiser pulled into Montevideo, so this way we can't touch them, we can't go in there. And they going to, that's the word, they're going to take the crew in and confine the ship. I forgot what the word is. I forgot what it was. Well, anyway, it turns out that the crew got off. The captain didn't want to sink his ship. He didn't want to hurt his men. When the 30 days was almost up, he gave some of the skeleton crew took the ship out. And before the English ships at sea could get near them, they scuttled the ship right in. Right? Yeah, you also remember that.
What was that ship?
Graf Spee.
Graf Spee, yes.
They scuttled her right under. So then when they told us we could go, we passed right by it going. The river wasn't deep enough to sink the ship, too. You know, they scuttled it and blew it up. So, then I got involved also in the Normandy Invasion. I was in the Union Hall with this friend of mine, and he was a seaman with my father before I was born. And he never did anything but go to sea all his life at the same rate. He never became an officer, just loved going to sea. So he and I were in the Union Hall. What the heck am I hitting here? We were in the Union Hall, and they're calling for a crew to go one way. We're delivering a ship to an Allied power. So it was what they call a Hog Island ship. And a Hog Island is similar to our Liberty ship today. They were built in 30 days, 1, 2, 3, and out. But they were riveted, whereas our Liberties were welded. So we looked at each other. Yeah, let's take a chance and see.
Now, why did they call it that? Is that the place it was built?
That's where it was built, the Hog Island.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think it was New Jersey. Then we decided to take the ship. We went down. We got hired. And the captain was Danish, my partner's Norwegian, and I'm Swedish. They called us the squareheads where we got the ship loaded now. So anyway, we loaded our cargo and we head for Swansea, Wales. And over there at the docks in the waterfront area is residential too. There could be houses right there, the kids playing almost around the cargo that's being discharged. So we discharged our cargo, and then they just slid us up the wharf 500 feet. No tug or anything by putting our lines on. And they started working on the ship. So now we realized what the one-way trip is going to be. They're stripping the ship. They're sabotaging it. They cut big holes between the cargo holes from number 1 to 2 and 2 to 3, and then you got the engine room. They even cut into the engine holes big enough you go walk through with your arms like that. okay? And the number 4, number 5, the whole ship can wound up as just one shell. Then they welded 1-inch thick steel plates in each cargo hole on each side. And that plate was about 24 by 24. And they put their charge behind that plate so when it blew, it would blow out. And that's what we lived on, a floating bomb. So after they got it all finished, they sent it up to North Scotland, waiting for the invasion. Now, there's anything more boring than being out at anchor. You can see lights ashore. There must have been 20, 30 ships, all like that. We weren't allowed to go ashore. So the old man, he was a hell of a nice guy, Captain Ing, I-N-G. So my partner and I asked him, Captain, any chance of us guys building a boat for recreation? What are you going to build it on? Well, look at all the dunnage in the cargo hold. Dunnage is wood they use to shore up cargo so it doesn't move. And it has no value at all. They use it from trip to trip. And periodically it's so bad off they get more stuff. So he's telling them, we're going to use the dunnage. He said, well, you know you're not allowed to go ashore. Yeah, we know that. Okay. So he allows us to build. So we had no tools on it, we got a hammer and a saw. And we made a framework. We got canvas to take the canvas over it, and then painted it. So it sealed up some of the old canvas. We had a mast on it and the sails, but no keel. Semi-V bottom, but no keel. And we didn't think that would be that big a problem. So we get this thing all finished and launching it around 10 o'clock on a Sunday. And all the guys are watching these squares launching this boat. I wonder if we'll ever see them again, you know. There are all kinds of remarks. So we get the boat over the side, he and I climbed down. And she took off like a rat in the wind. I loved to sail before that. And this thing would sail, you know. But then we went as far as the ships were all anchored to the last one. And coming back again, now we see guys on ships with binoculars looking at us. Coming back, we're headed for the ship, but we're losing sight. We're going sideways and forward. We couldn't get near the ship. So we passed, way past, figured we'd come back on the other. No, I couldn't do it. So we left about 10 o'clock, I guess, and 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. We're getting hungry, we're thirsty, cold. This was in June, but it was cold. Finally, Hans says, God damn it, we're going to shore. Big square head, you know. He pulled into this beach, and there was rocks. How he steered that boat between these rocks and right up on the beach. And here's 3 army soldiers, English soldiers, taking us into custody. Everybody was watching us all afternoon. They all knew what was wrong. We couldn't help it. So these guys took us to their barracks, and they gave us a supper, some food, and they were having an Ensa dance. Now we have USO, they have Ensa. So they invited us to the dance. We weren't prisoners or anything. So we didn't have any money. It didn't mean nothing. All the beer we wanted, sandwiches, we had a nice time. Next morning, they put us on a Jeep down to the dock. We get on the dock, and the boat takes us out to the ship. We get to the gangway, and the guy at the gangway says, hey, the old man wants to see you 2 guys. Can you imagine what he's going to say? So, I still remember that. We go up and knock on the door, and his door was open to the second deck. There was no passageway to go through, you know. So we knock on the door, who's there? Lindstrom and Rosenskjold. He had a big Norwegian name. Come in. So we go in, and he's sitting at his desk with his back to the door. He opens a drawer, pulls out 3 paper cups, pulls out a bottle, pours 3 shots, you know, turns around. And I don't swear as a rule, but this is what happened. He said, I thought you fucking squares were sailors. Everybody knew it wasn't our fault. We just couldn't sail that boat. But they had to needle us. Drink up. That was all the reprimand we got. So then they brought us back to New York on the Queen Elizabeth. From there, I skipped this into Helsinki. When it finally come to about the 5th of June, they moved us down towards Southampton. And then the rumor is tomorrow morning, D-Day. So they had us crowded so close that it was almost dangerous. If anyone's anchor come loose, somebody would suffer some kind of damage. So anyway, the next morning we're all ready. and we head across, and we had to follow between two mine layers. But in this case, it's sweeping, mine sweepers. And there's one here and one there, and we had to follow in between because they overlapped each other. So we had no trouble going across. We got to our point. Number 1 and number 2 ships were sunk already. An empty spot for us because number 4 was sunk. So they bring us up alongside 4, the water was calmer, and we had a tugboat up on this guide, because when you're going slow like that, it's hard to steer with a strong current. And the English Channel has the worst currents in the world. So they're pulling us out, and when they put us in here like this, there was a cruiser hanging over the side of that ship. They were going to use it sometime later. And it looked like a 20 or 25 foot wood boat. So when we get alongside like that, I said, oh no, the tug line broke. And our stern just smashed that thing to smithereens. The only thing, the engine went to the ground, to the bottom, all the wood was floating away. So they pulled us up, they got us a line on the stern of that ship, and the same thing on this one. We had to put these lines on until we blew it up. Then we can take the lines off. So we're handling these lines, and there's a plane coming down, strafing. There's a lot of ships sunk here, but this guy don't know they're sunk. So all of a sudden he must have realized he was wasting time on sunken ships. So he veered off. For me, all us guys up on the poop deck handling lines, the old man said, duck under the platform, duck under the platform. I turned to duck and there was no room. I stood there holding onto the rail and watching that plane, and then he took off. If it was all over, there you come out. The old man said, what's the matter with you? I said, you're brave. I said, no, Captain. I was scared. And I was too scared to talk. There's no doubt about it. A lot of guys, I wasn't afraid. So anyway, we got her in place. Everybody abandoned the ship. The engine room guys had to come out on deck. And the old man was there counting everybody. He counted twice. Somebody might be taking a nap or something, you know. So, okay, and then he went on the bridge and he blew the whistle and then he turned the key and the ship just shuddered like that. You know, you shift a car from forward to reverse. You know, you're not supposed to do that. But it just shuddered that way. And they sank us with like 18 feet of water, so our main deck was above water. But it was nerve-wracking. We didn't know what to expect. So we're standing there waiting to get picked up. And the old man said, I had a screwdriver here. What do you do with the screwdriver, Frank? I said, well, Captain, I'm going up in the wheelhouse. I'm going to get that clock. Oh, you can't do that. We got to leave all this stuff on the ship. The Army's going to use the quarters. I said, yeah, but they all got wristwatches. So he started talking to somebody else, and I sneaked up to the wheelhouse. That clock was gone.
Oh, somebody beat you to it.
Somebody beat me to it. That broke my heart. I've got one in there just like it. But it took me 20 years to get one, to buy one. But that clock was gone. So we got picked up. They took us to another ship. And they had a bunch of guys on there. There wound up 83 of us. They took us to the Isle of Wight. And the people on dock, I'll take one, I'll take two, whatever. That's how they put us up overnight. The next morning, we were told we had to be down the dock by 8 o'clock. They're going to take us on a ferry to Southampton. So the bar on the ferry must have been as big as these 2 rooms, the bar room. So where do you think we rode for that all night? If we rode in the bar. And nobody had any money. I don't know how the guy made any money at this bar. We get to Southampton. We haven't had a drink now in 5 or 6 weeks. We get to Southampton, we're all half stewed. So there's reporters on the dock, and somebody yelled out, them bloody Yanks are all drunk. So they didn't do much interviewing. They put us on a bus to take us to Bournemouth. Bournemouth is like a seashore resort. Just hotels, no stands, no hot dog stands, just a nice family place. So they put us up in a hotel. I forgot the name of it. And by the check-in desk there's a sign saying how much it costs per day for meals. It's like $1.20. Our contract calls for $5.40. So here in England we call a union meeting. And we tell them, hey, this is according to our contract. And we finally got it. So we stayed there for 3 weeks ago, and they took us down to Graf by train, and then we went by Queen Elizabeth to New York. Took us like 5 days, whereas it took over 2 weeks to go over. It was a short trip. So, I'm doing a lot of talking. I hope
No, that's okay. That's what we want.
yeah, I hope it makes sense. After 60 years,
Yes.
did this happen first or did that happen first? And when you write it, you write the high points. And if a guy wrote what I've written here, if a writer wrote that, you'd be 5 pages. You know what I mean? Because there's things to think about. You know you're going to, I never in the world thought I was going to do any recording of any of this. So we got back to Queen Elizabeth. This was before I was married. We got back on the Queen Elizabeth, and my mother-in-law and my wife and her girlfriend, they had a wedding all arranged. And that's where we got married, June '44. We were married 60 years. That's when I went to officer school, to stay home a little longer. But I knew I wasn't going to last, so I packed it in. I went around the Union Hall, and shipped down to Uruguay. And she was going to Italy, pick up troops, and from Italy we went to Panama. And these guys, when we passed the Rock at Gibraltar, they thought sure we were heading for New York, and instead we headed south. Well, there were about 600 black troops on it. And they screamed, they ranted, they raged. You couldn't blame them. They all had high points. You needed 36 points to go home. These guys had 40 and 50, 46. But there's nothing to do about it. So I took them through Panama, to the Philippines, and it took 3 days to clean the ship up to take the ship guys going back again. We were bringing wounded back. And some of them were so bad that they were in a stretcher and plastic cast, and you had to use the hoist to pick them up and then twist it so they go into it. It was pathetic. I remember one kid, he lost an arm and a leg, and he had so much guts. The recreation group on the ship went around to see him, see what they could do with him, for him. Yeah, I want to build a model airplane. He saw them being distributed. So he had a model airplane kit with a 2-foot wingspan on it. And you had a lot of work and something like that. So I helped the kid. And he likes cigars. He didn't smoke cigarettes. And one of my buddies, he smoked cigars, and he gave me a couple, and I'd give him the kid. We got to Frisco. He says, now what do we do with the plane? I said, I don't know. They sure had it. He says, no, I'm giving it to you. It cost me $15 for a piece of plywood to make a crate and send it to New York. When I got to New York, my father was one of those guys. Oh, he's looking at the crate already. He took it apart piece for piece, the plane, and he used that crate to build a sewing machine cabinet for his wife. And it was beautiful. They used it for many years.
What happened to the plane?
Well, a woman next door didn't have any kids, but she had a nephew that visited. And she allowed that kid to play with it. And it was a wind-up rubber band thing. And he glided it more. And it crashed every time he glided. So that was the end of the plane. Yeah. There was another kid on that plane, on that trip, going out to Philippine Islands. He was from Brooklyn. And how I met him was, I was a deck maintenance man. I didn't understand watches, but I did deck maintenance. And you know, the wires that hold the mast steady, you know, they call them guys. So about a week now I was working on guys. You go up to the crosspiece and mast, you pull up your bucket in your seat, you get in the seat, you lash your bucket down, and we didn't have gloves. Put your hands right in the slush with the ring. That's how you do the stay as you go down. So I did 4 of them. I was about ready in the afternoon to quit. All of a sudden I realized my ring was gone. Between the other 3, 4, I was wiping my hands. I wiped the ring right off. And the deck was covered with black troops. See, what am I going to do now? So I went on asking the guys, hey, you guys see your ring? And not me, man. And they were all made at waste anyway to begin with, you know. So I did that last stay. I didn't want to come back to that location again tomorrow. So I'm finished and I'm wiping up, and this guy comes over and he says, hey man, is this what you lost? He found them, and he gave it to me. So it turned out he was from Brooklyn. I said, that's why we're buddies, because we're from Brooklyn. So he was a musician, and he had a bass fiddle. But it looked like he used it for a canoe because it was so scratched, and oh, what a mess it was. I said, I was a woodworker in school and at home, always a woodworker. Good, bad, or otherwise, so I did it. So he said, what do you say we finish that thing? Yeah, how? I said, well, I'll have to pull some strings, you know. I had to go see a guy, and I got a gallon of paint remover. And he and I went on steel wool and paint remover, took the strings off and everything. Took that thing down to bare wood and rubbed it and smoothed it and rubbed it. We rubbed the sides of a hole rather than fill the hole. You know, so we sanded it, so it was a little thinner there, but it looked better than having some filling showing up. We got that finished. We put 4 coats of varnish on it. The varnish I had to steal. But 4 coats on that, you know, and rubbed in between. Boy, that looked beautiful. He carried it all over Europe. It never looked so good. I never heard from the guy again, you know. Lots of times you take an address and they take you over the phone number, and that's the end of it. But I hoped all the time they did a nice time with his banjo. I call it a banjo. And after that I made a trip on the M. Simmons, Furnifold M. Simmons, brand new Liberty ship. I was in the Union Hall and I meet this guy, Jack, who we shipped before. I said, what do you say, Jack? They're calling out a new crew, a full crew for Liberty. He said, yeah, I'd like to. He said, but I haven't been home for a year and a half. And I already bought a bus ticket. So he's going home to see his mother. She lived in Maine. So that was that. That was finished. He wasn't interested. Next week, I'm in the every Wednesday they were calling for a crew. So next week I'm in the hall and I meet Jack Hennessy, another guy I was shipped with. And the same thing, yeah, sure, let's try a Liberty ship better than these old buckets that we've been riding. So we go down to the company office and they give us a fare to go to Charleston. Get the Charleston report on the ship. And that was another job where I was in deck maintenance. I didn't go on watches, I just did deck maintenance. So to make a long story short, we loaded our cargo in it, and it was a full load of ammunition, full load. One skid full they mishandled on the way up, and they were leery about it, so they wouldn't put it in the cargo hold. They put it on the after deck. We got to sea. It was gas. When we got to sea, they give it gas impregnated. Some clothing was impregnated against gas. So it was enough for 12 men, but 4 men did the job. So of course the clothing, you know, it just got distributed. But after we got to sea, like that first night, we manhandled that stuff over the side. They must have done some bad job on the fish in that area later on. Well, anyway, we're heading for Guantanamo. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, a tanker alongside, a tanker up in front of the convoy got hit and went down. We're 50 miles from Guantanamo now. So after that ship went down, the convoy of 6 ships, we reorganized heading for Guantanamo. 5 after 4, I'm in my bunk, the top bunk. I always slept with my clothes on, never with shoes. I could never sleep with my shoes on. And the bosun was a big Norwegian, he's on the bunk under me. Well, we hear an explosion like your ears are talking to you. When will this ever stop? And it was just one explosion. The ship alongside of us was the ship that my buddy and I refused, James Sprunt. She just disappeared. I get goosebumps when I think it just disappeared, but the noise was unbelievable. After she's gone underwater, it was exploding. And that brand new ship, brand new crew, a lot of them just out of school. Full crew, that was it. So we kept going to, I was in charge of a lifeboat for battle stations. So I reported to my battle station. My guys came, and we swing the boat out, and then we get orders from the bridge. Up till now, with no orders from the bridge. Do not abandon the ship, do not abandon the ship. So of course that means we swing the boat and lash it down. The one boat on the other side, number 1 boat, those guys abandoned ship. They were up there fast and they're gone. So when we got that order, we started making ship shaving, and this boat drifted past our stern. And the guys on the stern gun saw this going by, and they thought it was a submarine. They're getting ready to go fire on it. Because the dark and anything there is suspicious. As it turned out, somebody recognized a lifeboat. It's a lifeboat, leave it alone. So we're headed for Guantanamo. And what a mess you wouldn't believe. And some of the mess you looked at, one of somebody's parts of somebody's body, or what was it? There's no survivors. So we get to Guantanamo, and we're still on deck trying to get stuff moved around. And my foot is wet all the time. It was wet. I jumped off my bunk without putting shoes on. It just kept running. Well, it was bleeding, and that's why my sock was getting wet. So we got to Guantanamo. They sent us. A couple of guys got hurt. So, and Navy logo, that would have been a Pearl Harbor. But for us, I doubt whether they even reported in the Navy Navy doctor that did it, you know. So we got fixed up there. We stayed there a week cleaning the ship up. From there we went to Panama, doing the same thing, cleaning the ship up. They had better facilities. Then we let go from Panama, heading for Australia. Now we got a German captain on this ship, Captain H.A. von Fluke. That was his name. He had a crew cut. When he talked, he clicked his heels, a real Nazi. He got kicked out of the Panama Canal. He was a pilot there for 22 years. And the war situation kicked him out of the canal, up to New York, to the States. And he let him be a captain on the Liberty ship. That's American security, huh? So we leave Panama, head for Australia. Now this captain is gun shy. Every morning he sounds general quarters. Every night general quarters. Now if you're on watch already, well, you're on watch. But if you just come off watch, you got to go back for 40 minutes or whatever it is until he declares it over. So we did that all the way to Australia. We were 42 days at sea with a full load of ammunition. We went so far south in one place we saw icebergs. And we were getting cold, so they convinced the old man, you know, he was a good seaman, good captain. But he was as a person, he was rotten. I'll tell you more about it when I get to it. So anyway, he was a smart man. We saw something that looked like a raft. And it was 4 50-gallon drums with a platform on it and a Japanese flag sticking on it. Now the Japs planted that, and they want you to get close enough to fire on it, to sink it, because their minefield was spread out and you were over their minefield. You'd be sinking yourself if you sank that thing. And your natural instinct would tell you. But this captain says, no, I don't think we should bother, let's get out of here. And we did. And we were told later on that that's what happened to a couple of different ships. So from Australia we went to Colombo, the people that just had the tsunami damage. Colombo, we stopped at Colombo for fuel, and then we headed up to the Bay of Bengal, to Calcutta. Now we were so tired of staying in quarters, nothing happened. General alarm. And the old man, he got to sleep all the time, nothing bothered him. He'd come up on the bridge in pajamas with his binoculars. So the deck crew got together and says, hey, let's keep our eyes open. If you see anything coming down, it's got to be an English ship, it's got to be an Allied ship. Pull the alarm, we'll wake him up, get him. So I'm in the crow's nest. I just got there, and the guy I relieved, he left. And I see smoke on the horizon. It's got to be an English ship, it's got to be an Allied ship. So I pull the alarm, there's a switch right there, you pull it. And then you wait till you get relieved. My station was with a fire extinguisher on the bridge. So the guy relieves me, and I run down and get my extinguisher, and I report to the bridge, to the mate. The captain's there with his binoculars, and the ship is getting closer and closer. Now she's broadside to us. Without turning his head, he says, Mr. Howell, that was the second mate. He says, who sounded the alarm? Lindstrom, sir. Captain's still looking. He says, well, who gave him permission? Mr. Howell was a gentleman. He said, no one, sir. He says, where is Lindstrom? I'm standing right next to the man. You know. Right here, sir. He says, and who gave you permission to pull that alarm? I says, no one, sir. I saw and I thought to be an enemy ship, and I did my duty. And I burst out laughing. Wise, snotty kid, you know, 21 years old. So we got away with that. We went to Calcutta, and they had a heat spell there for 3 weeks that we were there. The authorities advised the captains not to work on deck crew. The engine crew just do what they have to do, but it's extremely hot spell. And those harbors there was such a rise and fall that they have locks, and they lock the water in the harbor, and you can't use your toilets. You have to have a toilet boy. It sounds silly, but that's, guys come aboard and empty the pots every day. So we finally leave, and it was hot. There's something else. Oh yeah, we had monkeys on the ship. We had 300 monkeys coming back here for experimental purposes. And it was a thing they used to do all the time. And most of the time they flew them. Now there's no commercial flights. So they're taking a chance and putting them on deck. And I saw this contract. How much it was, I don't know. But here, this is for your boys that are going to feed the monkeys and keep the cages clean. So that was above and beyond what we were supposed to do. We don't do it on watch, we did it off watch. So we leave Calcutta, we're heading south. And just about off this place called Trincomalee, or a little fishing village, we get hit by another Liberty ship. Put a hole in our #2 cargo hold that flooded it, but not enough to sink the ship. The tugboat, an English private tug, come out, the salvage tug. We didn't need any help, we were mechanically all right. But they'd like to get a line on you, like to say they assisted you and they got a claim. So 3 times that guy pulled up, put a line on a cleat, and pulled off. The last line we chopped, and then he got the message that we don't need any help. So they escorted us into this little port, and we anchored. We stayed there 2 months, getting temporary repairs. We poured concrete. Another ship brought us the concrete and the sand, and we barricaded the outside with canvas, put the rope against it, 2x4s to reinforce it, and then built a wall inside the hole. And we poured concrete for 48 hours straight, so it would be all one piece. And we couldn't do it alone, so we had the gun crew helping us. So each one of us had a gunner assigned to us. So in other words, we got double pay, but we gave half it to the gunner. Mm-hmm. That's the only way they could pay him. So we got that thing pretty good, enough to get down to Colombo. They had a shipyard there. And when we needed it, we were in a shipyard. But if any warship come in that needed it, they took us out and put us on the side. So we got this 5 months all told repairing that. Oh, but the old man, he lived ashore. He didn't have any no problems, and there wasn't nothing to go ashore for anyway in that place. So he come aboard every day about 10 o'clock and look around, and it's like he's checking. And then he speak to the mate, and he maybe have lunch and he take off. So it was getting monotonous, and we were lousy, we were annoyed, and we were running short of paint. You know, you've been away that long, where are you going to get paint from? So the old man, he started feeling out these ships that were passing by, coming in and fueling up. He get a couple gallons here and a couple gallons there. And he filled up a 50-gallon drum and it was standing on deck. So one night, somebody made a hole in the barrel. And the paint went out over the deck, down into the harbor. The harbor authorities saw it before we did, and they saw the old man put on a notice about active sabotage. So nothing was ever done about it. But meanwhile, after we got hit, we pulled into this little port. And these monkeys now, what's going to happen to them? We still have to feed them, but they can't keep them in a long-range program. And the old man was still giving us a hard time. So 25 monkeys got loose. There's 2 of us. One guy was on watch, he walked me and another guy up. And the other guy, he pulled a nail out, and I put a stick under the door. 25 monkeys got loose. Oh, that mess they made. We captured 22 of them. 3 of them jumped over the side because they were so close. So from there we went back with the temporary repair back to Colombo. And that's where the shipyard put steel plates over all the work we did. And they could weld it. We didn't have any welding equipment. And we left there. Instead of going back to New York the way we were, we continued going west. And we went through the Suez Canal and the Mediterranean. And we were the first convoy going through the Mediterranean after it was opened up. Don't you think we're eating Christmas dinner? I had a grabbed that drumstick and I ran. A German air raid come down and broke up the convoy, but it didn't sink anybody. This was in the Mediterranean. And you can't do much spreading around. You got to land on both sides of it, you know. So we got out of that and then back to New York. During all the course of this bosun that I was roommates with, I couldn't stand him anymore. And I asked the old man if I could have a different job. I'll take a watch job and swap with somebody. So the guy did swap with me. He says the biggest mistake I ever made in my life going with them. They couldn't stand this bosun. He was such nasty, you know. So one day he was doing something and he picked up this line and wanted me to take it forward to the forecastle. So he just shoved it at me and I just kept my hands down and let it fall on deck. Who do you think you're talking to? You want me to carry it out of the carrier? Act like a man. Then he gave me some help. All right, and I gave him some more. When the old man come aboard, he reported me. And he told the old man that I threatened him. And this guy's a big like this. When we got to New York, we finally paid off. We had to go before the Coast Guard. 18 men were charged with different charges, and their papers lifted. We were fined $5,000, okay, amongst the 18. So we come up before the Coast Guard. We had to add all these offenses. Had to classify them. So the one about me threatening the bosun, this Navy chief, or Coast Guard chief, he read it and he said, "Now, when are you have to save yourself?" He's sitting down at the desk. I said, "Well, sir, you look at him and look at me." This guy looked at him, just charge dismissed.
Okay, we're going to have to stop.
A friend of mine in Florida, and she sent me a clipping out of the paper where somebody blasted the Merchant Marine.
Mm-hmm.
She says he didn't know what he's talking about.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't know what the Merchant Marine is.
Right.
During the war, they didn't know.
Yeah.
I remember going to shore lots of times in a civilian suit with bars and stuff that I earned. And we can't buy our bars. Ours are issued right from the government. And these guys, "Hey, you want a uniform? Go get a uniform." You know, criticizing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the tape's running again. So after this trip, when your ship was repaired, what happened then? After?
We continued on through the Mediterranean,
Mm-hmm.
across the Atlantic, and into New York.
Mm-hmm.
And we anchored out because that stuff is all secret until you get there. My mother never knew when I was coming home until I knocked on the door.
Mm-hmm.
And we were gone, that trip was 11 months and 18 days.
Did you ever, how were you ever able to keep contact with your wife and your mother?
You can write home, but
Right.
I didn't get one letter.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody in the crew, the whole ship, no mail for 11 months.
Mm-hmm.
So now, in normal conditions, she says, "Well, you move around so much." Well, we stayed one port for 5 months, so there was no reason for us not getting mail. Just lack of cooperation.
Okay, after you reached, now did you have the rest of the monkeys were still with you?
Then the contractor took them off.
Mm-hmm.
Took the rest of them off.
Okay. Where did you go from there?
From there, we went down to Colombo across into Malaysia, into the Suez Canal from the west.
Well, I mean, after you got back to the States from that voyage.
From that ship, the next ship was the Normandy Invasion.
Mm-hmm. Okay. After, so you kept in the service until 1946, correct?
November 46,
Mhm.
yeah. I was married, looking for a job. It wasn't easy for $30, $35 a week.
Mm-hmm.
I had a house already.
What did you do once you got out of the Merchant
I did a
Marine?
bunch of odd jobs because I had no trade. Did some maintenance work, building maintenance. And, I figured my best bet was to get a city jobs, whatever I qualified for.
Mhm.
So I took a test for the harbor tugs, the Staten Island tug. I got a good mark on it. But I wasn't a veteran, so I went to the back of the list. So finally I got called and I worked there about 7 months. I was we put on here, put on there for 7 months. That's how they would break you in. And I got disgusted with it. And I got steady 4 to 12 from them. And meanwhile, I looked for a job. And then I found a job, and I left the city.
Now you never were able to receive any kind of veterans benefits then?
Well, we kept the VA hospital. but that's about all. And the first year I was there, I was in and out, outpatient. And starting the second year, they did a reclassification on your income, your pension, and all. And I was $12 too much. So they fined me $500. Do I need them?
Yeah.
Now you had some pictures, or
Yes, I have.
did you want me to get those ones in the other room, or do you want us just to go back there and
It's up to
film
you,
it?
whenever you want to do it.
Maybe it's easier just to take the camera back there.
Yeah, okay, why don't you turn it
Good
off?
film.
Why
now?
can't you hold a tripod? On your
Oh.
shirt.
Okay,
And then the card is to confirm you that you earned that ribbon.
okay,
We can't buy our ribbons, we have to, the government sends them to us.
I see.
In the Army and Navy, you can buy them in the store. So, I think this is a combat, here's a combat. You see a star in it? Combat is for being attacked, and the star being directly attacked.
Okay.
Okay.
And this is my last ship, the John W. Brown. She visited Greenport a couple of years ago, so here I am behind the wheel. My old spot. So, and these things we've had for years, and we love them.
Now I see the first pin, that first ribbon is the Pacific,
Yeah,
and then this is a Merchant Marine Combat.
right.
This one is a Merchant Marine Defense. Atlantic War Zone. Mediterranean Middle East. And then this is a Merchant Marine Combat again with a star.
Now this one here is from the Union. That signified a torpedo. And they had a pin like this that you pinned on, it looked like a torpedo.
Okay.
That squeak would you say?
That was my sneaker.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And this here is a rig that there's the clock or something.
Oh, okay.
Stopped right now. And here's a Normandy Invasion. Little.
And then this, what is that? The
Well, you have to get close to read it.
okay.
It's a lot of good stuff.
Want me to read it? Oh, well, you can read. You can.
Oops, wait a minute.
Do you know anything about the Great Lakes? The size of their ships?
Oh yes, I'm from Buffalo.
Okay.
So.
There's an oil carrier. And she sank in a storm with all
Oh, the Fitzgerald. Yes.
Fitzgerald. Yeah. You're from Buffalo. I tried
Yeah.
to ship out of Buffalo one time. It was so cold. The ice was still on the lakes.
Yes.
You know what I did to get in 40 and 41?
That's the Exeter?
That's the Exeter.
Take one of that plane on deck. I think this guy's interesting.
All right, do you want to show us that plane again?
Let me just get something. Put out the floor.
This is a plane that was sent on deck just before 1939, that was going from the United States to Germany
Through Italy.
through Italy.